recognize where this is? How about this?
London,
Or that?
Sydney, Las Vegas, Taj Mahal.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what the world's going to look like in 40 years. In 2050, I'm not joking. In 2050, scientists have predicted that the world's going to look a lot like that and that and that and that. That's the Alps. And we already know this, and the world's trying to fix it. We have tried, like I think we started realizing some 30 years ago. At the Earth Summit, the world for the first time tried to come together and deal with climate change. It peaked in Copenhagen last year. We saw nothing come out of that, but a lot of people are trying to do a lot of things. These are some of the proposals that are on the table currently. Because we're losing ice, the very material that is making sure that the world isn't warming up, NASA is planning to throw up mirrors and shoot up mirrors into space so that it reflects the Earth's heat. Countries like Australia and the UK have to chip out blocks of ice up from the North and South Pole just to make sure that there's enough water. Some countries are trying. Some companies are proposing that they inject furum into the seas so that it can algae can grow and absorb carbon. That's carbon capture and storage. A lot of people, a lot of governments and organizations are pumping billions and billions of dollars into trying to solve climate change. But have they even thought of even a fraction of spending a fraction of that money into human capital? And the answer is no. Even our own Prime Minister in Copenhagen promised that he's going to be, we promised a 40% carbon intensity reduction by 2020, but has he thought about who's actually going to be delivering all this? Do we have enough capacity to fulfill the needs that all these people are promising us? And the answer is no. Because it's really easy for us to green companies and it's really easy for us to green organizations, but what's really hard for us to change is people. It's behaviors that is hard to change. And too few people are thinking about human capital and human capacity. And there's actually a bigger problem, and that's capitalism. Oh, you can't see the screen. But, never mind. But climate change is actually a symptom of a bigger problem, because ever since we started privatizing land, and ever since we found the assembly line, and ever since we found oil and coal, the real problem is human greed. We have built the world completely unsustainable without even considering the effects that we were putting on to the future. So the problem is, now that we realize that it's a problem and we're condemning ourselves into extinction, can we solve the climate crisis? And the question now is to look back in the past and see what other civilizations in the past have, the way they've dealt with it, how they've dealt with people. And this is how they've dealt with it. Strategic leadership and value efficient systems. This is how the world has used its human capital in the past. But why human capital? So the first thing I will do as human resource minister is change the name of the ministry to human capital, because we cannot view people as a resource. It has to be. It's not renewable. It's renewable, but it has to be constantly replenished. We have to look at skills and we have to look at roles before we can fulfill a certain need. Because at the end of the day, when we look at today's generation is generation why not? Because we're starting to see the problems that's been coming out of the way that the world has been developing. We are very different from the generations before. We are a lot more connected to the world in the way our predecessors were before, and we want different things now. A lot of young people are rejecting the way that traditional organizations have operated. We don't want to work for a company that tells us what to do. We want a lot more autonomy in where we work, and we want to contribute a lot more. These are examples of how young people are starting up their own businesses today, much more than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago. What we want is autonomy. So what I propose as human resource minister is that we have to decentralize our human capital. We have to start giving autonomy to communities to decide how they want their own people to develop. We have to give them the autonomy to decide what kind of skills they want. Today, it's about being force-fed. We are prisoners of our own education, and it's because that is what we are told to us. But what if we start realizing, hey, you know what? Like, I don't need to move to a different country to be better. And this is the problem with brain drain, because at the end of the day, if we look at the way that Malaysia works, we are generally, or if we consider Malaysia as a company, or like if we imagine that the Prime Minister Najib as the CEO of Malaysia Incorporated, that will start to think about what human resource means. Because in a company, human resources is about retaining and attracting the best talent. But are we doing that? But before a company can do that, it has to figure out what kind of jobs it requires. And before it can decide what jobs a company requires, it actually needs to look at where the company is heading. And the question now is that, do we understand where Malaysia is heading? Do we like where Malaysia is going? Do we know what Malaysia is going to look like by 2020? And the question is no. That is why so many young people are leaving, because we don't like what Malaysia is going to look like. We don't like where Malaysia is heading. And that's why that's a problem with brain drain. So before we can start looking at what kind of skills we need to develop, we need to see what Malaysia needs. We need to see what the communities need. And these are examples of how of how individual autonomy works and community autonomy works. For example, the Zapatistas in Mexico have their own, have a lot of autonomy with how they run their education system. Some communities already have their own currencies. It's models that are already working out there. And if we look at sustainable development, and if we look at climate change as a problem, we see that there's also a lot of opportunity in it as well. If we look at moving into green energy or greening our homes and greening our buildings, it requires a huge labor, a huge amount of skilled labor. Similarly enough, if we look at renewable energy, that one is very dependent upon where we're situated regionally or physically. For example, if we're somewhere if we're in Penang or if we're along the coast, then we can take advantage of tidal energy. And this is all about decentralizing the source of our energy. Same goes for our vehicles, our energy source. So it's about green jobs, and it's about realizing that at the end of the day, a lot of these proposals require very heavily on human capital. And too few people are thinking about where this human capital is coming from and exactly what we need before we can fulfill certain roles. Because it's really quite complicated. It is not as easy as we think it is. It's not about, hey, we're going to start our own solar panel industry and assume that everyone would be able to, we either have to spend a lot of money to bring people in, or we're going to need to skill up our own people. And this is opportunity for us to not just attract new talent, but also retain our own young people. So if we look at the spiral of empowerment, at the end of the day, within human nature are deep needs for fairness, cooperation, effectiveness, and meanings. So if we're capable of learning the skills of deliberative problem solving, and then democracy becomes no longer a fixed structure, but an evolving values-driven culture that we create. Because at the end of the day, rules set democratically keep wealth widely dispersed. So markets remain open, competitive, and life-serving as guided by democratic principles. Political decision-making is free from the influence of wealth, so more and more people have a voice in problem-solving, and problem-solving power, connection, and hope grow to enable progress towards resolving local to global crises and reinforcing the liberating premise. So if you really think about it, at the end of the day, it's about what we want, and it's about taking that power back into our hands and empowering our communities. That's all. Thank you.